Good morning. Today we're going to talk about the march to the Civil War, the incidents from about the 1820s through the 1860s that led to the Civil War. What you need to understand was that ever since the American Revolution and the Constitution, America had been not really a United States of America. It was really bad under the Articles of Confederation. We know we replaced that in 1787 with the Constitution, but the Constitution was not perfect in solving all of those issues. And as we know, after that, the United States started to develop political parties, the Democratic Republicans that would become the Federalists and the Anti-Federalists. And there was always this question about how strong the national government should be. In general, the North believed that the national government should be very strong, and they supported that federal position. In the South, they thought that the states should be the strongest portion. They kind of favored the anti-federalist point of view. That's sort of where we're, at, and because of industry, because of economy, the North and the South, they slowly start to more and more divide. But there were some compromises that were trying to solve this problem. And that's where we're going to talk a lot about today, was some of the compromises and some of the setbacks that led to the Civil War. So, beginning in about 1820 through 1861, when the South finally secedes or leaves the Union, you've got some treaties and some problems between the North and the South that really go and further edge them to war. So this short little video is really, we're probably going to break it up into two parts, and there's really two or three that you need to know. And so we'll start out with the two most famous, the Missouri Compromise and the Compromise of 1850. The Missouri Compromise deals with this area here of what was the Louisiana Purchase. Okay? So as we gain new territory, Louisiana we buy from France in 1803. Spain, we get this as a result of the Mexican-American War. Texas, remember, they have their own revolution, the Texas Revolution. They become an independent republic, and they stay for about 10 years as an independent republic. That's why they're the Lone Star State. And then they decide to join the Union. Oregon, we get as a treaty with Britain. They thought we were going to actually have a third war with Britain. There were those who wanted to go to war over this territory. Britain and America just decide we're going to have a treaty, continue this line right here, and America gets this and Britain. What the issue is that Missouri wants to enter the Union, the United States, and they want to enter that as a slave state. And if you remember, each state, because of the Constitution, gets 2 senators. So small states and big states are equal. Well, now we've got this issue over slave states and free states. And if Missouri comes in as a slave state, the slave-holding states are going to have an advantage in Congress. They're going to have 2 more votes than the free states. So what do? Well, we broker a compromise. Henry Clay was the great compromiser, and he worked on this. We allow Missouri to come in as a slave state, but we also at the same time allow Maine to come in as a free state, and we preserve that balance. What to do over the rest of that land is we have this Missouri Compromise line, and above the line there's no slavery, and below the line that territory is open for slavery as those territories become states. And so that solved the problem for the time being, at least this initial. It doesn't really solve the problem down the road and forever. Okay? And that brings us then to the 1840s. Remember, because of war with Mexico, the Mexican-American War, we get California and the Southwest. And so, what to do with all of that territory? California in 1849 has the California Gold Rush. And now they've reached that population threshold to become a state, and they want to enter the Union as a free state. So again, that's going to mess up that balance now that had held steady since the Missouri Compromise of 1821. Texas, who's now become part of the United States, they're having a land dispute as to where their western border is. And finally, there's Washington, D.C. A lot of people are unhappy because Washington, D.C., the seat of government, the home of, democracy and American freedom, is the largest slave market in the United States. Didn't really seem like we were walking the walk to a lot of people. And Henry Clay brokers a compromise called the Compromise of 1850. So, we're going to let New Mexico and Utah, we're going to organize them into territories, and we're just going to ignore the question of slavery for right now. We're going to solve that problem through popular sovereignty. Popular means like population, the people, sovereign, to reign, to rule, like a king reigns. Okay, so the people rule. The people are going to get to decide for themselves. California comes in as a free state. So now we've messed up that balance in the Senate between the free states and the slave states. So we have to give the slave states something. So to that end, we give them the Fugitive Slave Law or the Fugitive Slave Act. Okay, and we'll talk specifically about that because that has a lot of ramifications for the United States. Okay, we abolished the slave trade in Washington, D.C. There's no more buying and selling, but slavery is still admitted there. Texas gives up its land that was in dispute and is paid a sum of $10 million by the United States government. Which brings us to looking something like this. Okay, so Texas is resolved and its border sits like this. Utah and New Mexico territory just means that it's not yet a state. It's part of the United States, but it does not have the population to become a state yet. California comes in free. The Missouri Compromise line is sort of still there. All of this, again, is still unorganized territory. The Oregon Territory is part of the United States, but again, not a state just yet. Okay? So those are the two big compromises that you need to know, the Missouri Compromise and the Compromise of 1850. And so they, solve the problem, but only for a short period of time. No problems.